All right, thank you so much to everybody who's tuning into this. This is our second CWMEA Q&A mentorship session. Thank you to everybody who came to our last session, and if you can make it to our next one, that would be great, but if you can tune into this whenever you get a chance, that would be awesome as well. I'm Liz Harvey. I am your Washington Music Educators Association Collegiate President-elect, and with us today is the fantastic Erin Keeton-Howard. Erin is a Seattle-based musician and music educator who is passionate about bringing people together through music. Currently, Erin is the director of bands at the Northwest School, director of the Seattle Symphonic Band at North Seattle College, and the co-founder director of the Formation Wind Band, a Seattle-based all-female wind band. Thank you so much for being here, Erin. And if you want to tell us a little bit more about what you're currently doing in your job, maybe some of your school background, that would be awesome.
Sure, thank you for having me. So I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I went to University of Missouri-Columbia, also known as Mizzou. I grew up in band country. It's very marching band heavy. I taught for 5 years in Missouri, middle school and high school band, before pursuing graduate school at UW. That's what brought me out here. I did my master's in music ed and with an emphasis in conducting. And that's when I really started working with community ensembles. As a graduate student, I co-conducted the UW concert band and really enjoyed working with adults who continue to choose music. After that, when I graduated, I worked with the Rainbow City Performing Arts for a little while with their concert band before taking on my current position with North Seattle College. I also have played in a brass band, the Give Back Brass Band, which is a nerdy group of teachers basically who perform in non-traditional spaces to bring music to places with limited access, like the juvenile detention center or homeless shelters or the food bank. We are kind of retired at this point because life, but all of that is to say that a major passion of mine is community music, but also community that exists through musicking or music making, which has a lot to do with my teaching philosophy.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. And as we have advertised on the social media promos, our theme for today is self-care and balance. And I think that's something that we all, as students, as future music educators, Erin, for you as a current music educator, we could all probably improve upon. And so thank you for being here to just chat with us about that. I just want to reiterate, these sessions are made to touch on subjects that we might not have addressed in our music ed curriculum in our colleges. We are really trying to base all of these topics off of what you guys want to hear from teachers who are in it, who are working through it every single day. And we want to make sure that there are things that maybe you're scared to ask your professors. Here are people who went through the exact same things as you and who can really answer your questions. And I should also shout out, Quaver Music is our sponsor for these sessions. So all 12 months of this year, we are going to have sessions just like this, and you should definitely tune in because it is going to be worth your time. All right, so jumping right into our questions on balance and self-care, our first question comes from some of our CWMEA members, and it is, do you think teachers need to be inherently organized to be successful, especially in relation to balance?
This is a really good question, and it's two parts, no and yes. So inherently organized, no. Being organized is a skill. I am a organized chaos kind of person. I exist in kind of piles of organization or systems that are maybe non-traditional. But the yes part is, it's so important to be organized with your job because of time management. And because if you are not organized, you are not going to be giving the best of your thoughts to your lesson plans and to your kids. So I took some notes, and I have some things I'd like to share just to kind of give you tangible examples of what I mean when I say organized. So I teach band, middle school and high school, and then my two adult bands. And probably the most helpful procedure that I've created for myself is um, to take a monthly calendar and write in all of the term dates, start and end dates, grading periods if you have those. Then write in all the breaks, all the professional development days, all of the assemblies, especially if you teach high school and your bands are going to be playing at those. Basketball games, football games, volleyball games, if you do those, um, religious holidays. So you get all of that on your monthly calendar. Um, then you start with one term, so say first quarter, or I'm on trimesters, which is weird, but nice, but weird. Anyway, start with the first term, and then you figure out what concepts am I going to teach. In middle school, it's actually kind of nice with method books that you can kind of take your curriculum pacing from there. Um, for high school, I love chatting with high school directors about how they do curriculum mapping, because there's not, like, for elementary, you can buy a book that is like, here is curriculum, teach it like this. And they don't really make that for high school. And when I was in high school, our band director was just like, okay, one ensemble, this is what we're playing today. Like, no why we're playing it, or historical significance, or how it connects to the world today. None of that. Just like, get ones at contest. So for high school, it's important to put some thought into, what do you want them to know? What's the point? What do you want them to know? And so after you decide what concepts are going to happen each quarter or each term, I like to, well, okay, you can do it a couple different ways. So if you have your monthly calendar, you can just make a list of all the different things, concepts that you want to teach, and kind of slot them in by week. And it's really important that you put your academic calendar on there, because like for me, I'm on block scheduling. So sometimes I see my kids twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. If it's a twice a week thing, and then there's a holiday on one day and an assembly or a fire drill on the other day, I could not see kids at all. And that is not when I want to plan a playing test, because they will not have practice or even know that it's happening. So being organized prevents you from putting your kids in a position where they're not really going to be successful. Um, and like I said, it's not inherent, it's a skill. It's, I would say, organization and communication skills are the two most important band director skills that I've learned, and they directly contribute to balance and self-care. So after you get your concepts for the term or whatever, I like to plan by the week. So, oh, it's in the other room. I made this really nerdy template where it just says like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then there's a giant box for each of my classes, so I can bullet what concepts we're addressing. And then I also pre-assign what homework they're doing. Because with kids, if you don't tell them specifically what to practice, it's not happening. I mean, as musicians, we think, oh, practice what sounds bad until it doesn't sound bad. Kids don't get that, not at all. Really interesting. Ask, like, let them play, ask them how they think it sounded, and you'll learn a lot. Anyway, okay, so that's one organization thing that I think is super, super important. Another thing, especially when I was a younger teacher, this is my 13th year, index cards, and then I write all the concepts I want to teach in that year, and then I put the index cards in order, like, oh, I can't really teach dotted quarter notes until I teach single eighth notes. Before single eighth notes, we should do eighth note pair. Before eighth note pairs, we should do quarter notes. Dotted half notes could go after half notes, or you could just do them with dotted quarter notes and explain the rule of the dot. So taking index cards and putting them in logical order is a really quick way to figure out your scaffolding, because the order that you teach things matters. So the reason organization is so important is because it'll make you a better teacher. You'll have more success with your kids because you've thought through your processes. And then also time management. You need to plan for the whole week at a time. That's how I like to do it. You need to plan ahead of time because you need to leave school. The days that I stay late at work are the days that I'm catching up because I chose to watch Grey's Anatomy all weekend instead of, taking care of things. You'll never, ever, ever have enough time during your plan period. Sometimes during plan period, you're going to just stare at the wall, and that's fine. That happens sometimes, but you have to decide when you're going to do your planning. I think it's helpful to do it at the same time in the same place. So I really like working at a coffee shop. I have dogs, and they don't understand teacher prep time. So it's hard to do it here. And if I'm at school, it's like having children. Like someone always seems to need me for something. So I like to plan it at the coffee shop. I'm also more caffeinated. So do your planning in advance. That is so important. I'm trying to look at my notes. Oh, and then the other thing about being organized, a system that I do that I also kind of stole from a colleague is to have just a notepad. My one at school is bigger, that stays on your desk for action items. So don't put anything else on there. No reminders, nothing. It is just for action items. So when you do have 15 minutes and you're brain dead, you can just look at the list and be like, oh, I can do this one thing, check. So that can be really helpful. So organization is not optional, but it's also, it can be a skill you work on over time, and it doesn't have to look the same. That's a big misconception about being a band director in general. There's kind of this historic role of like the father figure band director. And that's not real. And if you're doing something that's not authentic to you, you are certainly not going to be successful, and your students will notice. So that goes for organization as well. You need to find a system that feels good. I tricked myself into being organized because I have a love for office supplies and colored pens. So I buy like cute Post-its, and then I have my preferred pens. And sometimes, there might be some doodling that happens before I actually get around to planning. But that works for me. So you should not feel bad if your method is not traditional, if you don't have like a leather folio. Doesn't matter. Just like find something that works for you and stick to it. That's all.
Great. Those are all such great tips. And I kind of want to touch back on this action list that you talked about. So is that different than your normal to-do list of every day, or can you give some examples of what those actions might be that you
Yeah.
put?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So when you're planning as a teacher, there's a few different categories. So there's when you plan for the week, I might like, what am I doing with my kids? So we're going to do combos in jazz band. Then we're going to work on these 3 lead sheets. And then we're going to talk about improvisation tools. And so I write down what the plan is, but then there are action items that go with that. Like, do they already have the lead sheet? Does it need to be copied and distributed? Did I make the lists for the combos? Did I reserve rooms for the combos to go to? So that's an action item list where the action items are directly related to my daily plans. But I kind of do 2 different lists, like on either side of the page, because then there's long-term action items like find a jazz festival, print receipts and turn them into the department chair, submit my observation reflection. I thrive in organized chaos. So those like really mundane clerical things are, if I have to choose something to fall off the table, it's always that. So it has to be on the action list and it has to stay on my desk until it's done. When I'm really stressed, I'll go to single Post-its for items. Like when the action list is just like terrifying. Like one little thing, like find lead sheets that you want to use. Don't even have to print them, just find them. So then I'll like put the Post-its along the bottom of my computer so I can take one off and throw it away. But yeah, as a teacher, you're going to have action items that are immediate, that have to do with kids, and then you'll have action items that have to do with you as an adult professional. And obviously the kids stuff is way more fun, but you have to do it both.
Great. All right. Do you want to continue through the questions from our CWMEA members, or do you want to jump down to the currently practicing teacher questions?
Let's just keep going.
All right, let's keep going then. So the next question from one of our CWMEA members is, what do you do to cool down after a busy day of teaching, concerts, or other work-related chaos?
I am an introvert. I'm a social introvert. So I really like to be with people. I really like teaching. I like the chaos. I like the bonding. You know, the band room is loud. But after, like, especially concert weeks, I really need some quiet time to recharge. I really like to spend time outside, especially since moving to the Pacific Northwest. In Missouri, I was not really an outdoor girl. There's nothing to do. But yeah, I have dogs, so I like to spend time with them. But I think mostly, like, I really need time to recharge. Like, on the way home from a concert, I usually don't have the radio on or anything. Not like as a practice, but just by pattern. It's time to be reflective. When we're talking about balance, reflection is a huge piece. Communication, as I was saying earlier, communication and organization are the two like biggest things I can talk about. If you're organized, you will know what to say. So you can communicate early and often with parents, with administrators, but also with yourself. So I'm gonna like kind of morph this into maybe one of the other questions. Self-care. I have strong feelings about self-care and also about what it's not. So self-care is about checking in with yourself now to set yourself up for success later. And sometimes that means I'm going to eat an ice cream cone for dinner because it will make me happy right now because I had a really crappy day. But if I say that every night, that's not going to be good. I'm going to have health issues. I'm going to feel gross. My teeth are going to rot, you know. So self-care is not just like skipping out on things and bubble baths and, you know, comfort food. It's really checking in with yourself. I don't remember my early 20s because I was a band director. I lived alone with my dog, my poor dog. And I just worked. I grew up in St. Louis, but I moved to Kansas City for like my first real job. No friends, no family. So I just worked a lot. And I was 22 and I taught middle school and high school. And my oldest kids were 18. So we were like listening to the same music and watching the same TV shows, which is terrifying. But like my middle school kids like knew more about my life than any of my friends did because I was at work all the time. And I know there's kind of like this stigma in the band world, like you just got to grind through it. You know, it's what we do. Yes, but also balance is a thing. So when I was in my early 20s and like not sleeping very well, and I didn't know how to cook, so I was like eating crap all the time. I just ignored it. I just ignored it and pushed it away. And so things that I've had to learn later is to check in with myself. I think I learned that really unhealthy coping mechanism when I was in college. When I was in college, I was hell-bent on graduating in 4 years. I had like 2 classes from community college that counted, but they were like, well, to graduate in 4 years, you're going to have to take like 21 to 23 credit hours. And it was like game on, which was stupid. but I was stubborn. We'll call it tenacious. I was tenacious. And I did. And so my junior year, I was president of the music fraternity. I was in the top ensemble. I worked part-time, and I was in 21 to 23 credit hours. And I just learned to go, 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 go. Like I would wake up and count the hours until I could take a nap. That is not okay. If you're there, stop it right now. Lene looks like she has some feelings. Stop it. Okay. So it took me until my late 20s, and even into my 30s now, I'm about to turn 35, to learn how to check in with myself and be like, my body feels terrible. I need to drink some water. Like that is the adultiest thing you can do, drink water. I think that, so the question was, how do you cool down after a busy day of teaching, blah, blah, blah. I take time for myself. That's what I do. So I didn't grow up with the beach, so I'm obsessed with it. And so even in the winter, I'll go all bundled up and just sit on a bench and like feel the salt water and be alone and have it be quiet. And that's really meaningful to me. I think you have to have something. I had like a quarter life crisis when I was in undergrad, as I was preparing for my junior recital. And one of my professors was like, Erin, calm down. What are your hobbies? And I was like, hobbies? Say more. And they were like, what do you do when you're not doing music? And I was like, sometimes I sleep. She was like, this weekend, go find a hobby. Go find one. And I was like, I don't have time. She was like, go find one. So I went to the student union. They had a little art center, and signed up to do a free black and white photography class, a little 6-week session. And I loved it because the dark room is quiet and dark, and it was the opposite of the band room, which is chaos. So that was really good for me. I did that for my junior and senior year, just dropped in when I could. I'm like, I know where you are. I see you. You don't really have time to have a hobby, but you should decide what you can do to just be with yourself, even if it's for 5 minutes. Like find the most beautiful spot in your neighborhood and just go sit there for 5 minutes. I got really into Sudoku in this last year. I sound so old. Long story short, I had some family trauma happen last year, and I spent a lot of time in the hospital. And a way where I could just like the world was overwhelming, a way that I could feel in control is I would just sit and do Sudoku for like 10 or 15 minutes and just kind of let my mind go blank. The other thing is you have to get off your phones. How many of you spend too much time on your screens? Yeah, I 100,000,000% do too. I'm addicted to this stupid block breaker game right now. Like I got to the point where I'm like, oh, it's only $1.99 for 1,000 more coins. Oh my God, who am I? So something that I try to do all the time, but especially when there's not something pressing, is when I come home, I put my phone with my keys by the door, and then I'm guilty. Like I will multiple times like reach for it. Like I'll just check my email. Oh, I'll just see if I got a reply on that. Just don't do it. Like you don't need to be accessible. You don't need to be accessible 24 hours a day. And it feels like it in college. It sure does. But when you're a teacher, you don't. Like that's the truth. Parents will want you to be, but you don't. It's your job. How many of you identify as musicians? Like I am a musician. That's your role. You're also a human being, right? Boundaries are important. Yeah. You guys are ahead of the game. So I have this magnet situation here with things that I love. And one of them is this picture. Hold down. This is 22 or 23-year-old me conducting a contest for the first time. And I remember feeling so terrified and overwhelmed, and also joy, like such joy. And those shoes look great. I don't wear cute shoes like that anymore. So it's important to remember why we're doing this, right? It's not, I don't know. I could never be one of those people that like sits at a desk and like does finance or taxes, or I don't know. That sounds terrible. Like, I help kids be the best version of themselves while we learn through making music and trying to help them see the world and their place in it. That's magical. That's what your time needs to be focused on. So if you're spending all of your time on email or on your phone, you're missing it. You're missing the point. And I did not know that for a long time. So the next question, do you want to ask that one?
Yeah, so that links right into what you were just talking about and the next question is, do you have a go-to self-care or treat yourself after a career or personal success?
I'm going to tie that one and the next one together.
Okay, sounds good.
So self-care for me is alone time. But the treat yourself, for me, it's travel. Travel helps me zoom out. So as band directors, our world can be very myopic. Like, I always joke with people, in the apocalypse, I'm pretty useless. I have like an extreme amount of knowledge about a very limited topic. So like, I have no practical skills, but I can tell you the relative pitch of like the fire alarm. Like, so I have all this knowledge about a very specific thing because it's my life. And I've like spent so many hours of my life figuring out the best way to get trombone players like to not throw their slides off. So traveling for me is a chance to stop thinking about that and to go see the world and to see myself in the world. So that has been really meaningful. And then food. I'm kind of a foodie. I like cooking. I like trying new things. So often, like, my wife and I will celebrate. We really like surf and turf. I like to grill. I learned how to make scallops. So we'll like live it up and have a very expensive grocery bill. But like, real talk, I still eat blue box mac and cheese, and I like to cut up hot dogs and put it in there. So it's not like I'm a successful teacher living the life. Like, come on. What else did I say? Oh, at the end of every school year, I go get a massage, like a real grown up go get a massage. And I always feel bad about it because they're so expensive, but it's 1,000,000% worth it. And I always like feel like such a little kid because I have to tell them like, today is my first day of summer. And they're like, okay. But it's like an event for me. So those are things I do to treat myself. Go ahead and ask the next one.
All right, the next question is, how do you advocate for your own self-care needs as an individual when, as teachers, our role is often to advocate for others first?
So it comes back to real talk with yourself. You have to check in with yourself. You cannot just keep going and going and going. You have to make time. For some people, that's journaling. Oh, I see your link. Okay. For some people, that's journaling. For me, when I was younger, I didn't really have hobbies, but all my free time I spent with close friends. like one-on-one coffee dates, or even just like sitting on the couch and like having a really like honest personal conversation has been really helpful. So real talk, basically, like you need to check in with yourself, and then you need to advocate for yourself with the people who care about you. And if they really care about you, it will be fine. The first year that I was dating my now wife, we've been together for 8 years. And the first year I still lived in Missouri, and I remember I was very nervous. And so I would like give her a pep talk through every season of being a band director. So I'd be like, it is marching band season. I don't have time for you. I really like you, but bye. Like Thursday night practices, Friday night football games, Saturday marching band. Um, and then I had this rule about school nights. Like I have to be home by like 8 o'clock on school nights because I teach 0 period and I live 40 minutes away from work. So from the beginning, she has known that my work schedule is what it is. And then even sometimes now, like with my parents, or even like current friends, I'll say, I am having a really hard week. I can't I can't take on anything else. I know I said I would help you with your shed, or I would like babysit or whatever. Um, so it's okay to like, it is okay to back out of things when you're just saying what you need. As well, if in addition, you are trying to be more thoughtful when you say yes. Does that make sense? So like, oh, like I need to not make commitments on Sunday nights because I never want to go to them because I get anxious about work the next day. So, how do you advocate for your own self care needs? I think it all starts with being honest with yourself. Um, and if when you check in, you're like, oh, I haven't planned for any of my classes this week, well, when you say no to your friend, you know what you need to do.
Yeah, that's a really, really excellent way of putting it. I think, like you were saying at the very beginning, with I think the second question, a lot of the time we use self care as an excuse to not treat our bodies very well or do nothing when we could really be taking care of ourselves. So I'm glad you said that. Um, we're going to move into the questions from currently practicing teachers or different adults on our WMEA board. The first one is, how do you maintain healthy relationships while also focusing on your career? I know you just touched on that a little bit with your wife when you were dating first.
Mm-hmm. Um, Let me see. What did I say? Oh, I think it's having proactive conversation. So, like I said, with my wife, but also like if someone asks me to do something professionally, sometimes I have to say no. Here's something that's fun. It's like a great problem to have. So, like when I was in college, I was taught anytime you get offered a gig, you say yes, right? Because if you say no, they don't ask you again. So every single time someone offers you a gig, you say yes. If you don't know the piece, you spend every ounce of time in the practice room, you figure it out, you make time. That's not sustainable forever. So, like, especially once you're teaching full time, sometimes, even if it pays, you have to say no. I don't get to play nearly as much as I would like. And I have said no to a few gigs, and it hurts. Like, it hurts a little bit because I love playing. But, I also like have commitments at home, and um, I want to stay married. So I have to make time to be here. So I think knowing your limitations and acknowledging your limitations to yourself is important. Um, and then also, I think it's important to, like, the most valuable thing you have is your time. It's none of your belongings. It's not your career, it's your time. So you should be very selective who you give it to. So if I have friends who are just not like reciprocating. Maybe it's just like different seasons of life or whatever. Um, I like will choose to put that time elsewhere because I have such little free time. So I have made really intentional choices, um, like where I invest my free time.
Great. Okay. Our next question from the currently practicing teachers and WMEA members is there such a thing as being too invested in your classroom?
This feels like leading the witness that they worded it this way. Um, I can tell that it's written by current teachers. Yes. So, to invest in your classroom, I can interpret that a few ways. To invest in like time wise or attachment, um, but all of the above, the answer is yes. So, you want that to be a really comfortable, helpful place for kids, but you should not live there. You should go home to where you really live. Um, I mean, my classroom's cute. I'll be honest. I like every classroom I've had, I decorate with like the school colors and pro tip, use fabric for bulletin boards, not paper. Use ribbon for borders, not cardboard. But even so, like I do that before school starts so that it feels really good. And then, yeah, like if you're managing your time and if you're using systems of organization that work for you, you should be able to leave. Um, there are like two, I've done this both ways. So sometimes when I don't live super far from school, I will stay at school until all the work is done. So when I come home, I'm not thinking about work. Ideally, I'm not doing any work. I used to live in Shoreline and teach in Sammamish, and it was really, really important to get over the bridge before like 4 o'clock. So I would like rush home, but then I would have the house to myself and I could work for like 30 minutes to an hour and then be done. Either way is fine. Like I said, it's really just about what you do for you. But if you're at school and it's 8 o'clock, even if you're single, even if you don't have any pets, like you are worth taking care of. And so you should go home and you should call your mom or read a book or learn how to cook. Um, Even if you like being at school. So, like, sometimes, especially when I was younger, I would be at school late and then it's so late, it's like, well, the basketball game is starting. I'll just go like cheer on the kids, which you should do sometimes. But if you're doing it all the time and you're just like never at your home, like stop it, go home.
Yeah, all of those are really, really great things. Our last speaker was Chandra Ramprasad, and she said a lot of the similar things where it's like you have to have a boundary of where you say, this is when I'm going to go home every day, and this is how I'm going to invest my heart and my soul and my work into these students, into this classroom, but also this is how I'm going to invest all of those things into me as a human being. So thank you for reiterating those things. And I'm sure our next speaker is probably going to say the same things. So the next question, I'm not sure if you want me to ask, you kind of touched on it. So it's up to you, or we can move on to okay. So the next question, like I said, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but have you found hobbies or interests to balance your life outside of music, and how did you find these?
Yeah, so I talked about photography. It was kind of like forced fun. Travel, being outside. My latest hobby, though, I found during the pandemic. I caved and decided to see what TikTok was about. And it can be terrible, but it's also kind of interesting if you curate it correctly. Uh, my wife would be laughing right now. It's her fault. Anyway, so um, I started watching art videos and I learned about pour painting. Um, and I got really into it. And during the pandemic, like I wasn't going out and spending money. So I just like, that's what all of this is now. Um, So pour painting is messy and I'm not great at it, but I really enjoy it. And I don't like not being good at things. I think that's pretty stereotypical of band directors. Like I like to be in control, I like to know what's happening, and I like to do it well. But it's really satisfying. Like I've watched a lot of videos, and some people are just like very neat and they wear gloves and like wash all their utensils right away. And I'm just like, oh, that's like what I need my band room to look like. Like I need it swept with the stands all facing the same way and the chairs stacked. But when I paint, like I don't wear gloves. I have paint clothes because it ends up all over me. And I've tried like following the tutorials, but it's really just more fun to just do it. There's a lot of paint on my carpet right now. It's fine. Doesn't matter. So I would encourage you to try things you're not good at because it's humbling. And I just for the longest time, I thought the things that I was stressed about, it's like middle school kids, right? So you see that they are like having a meltdown because their mom bought the wrong brand shoes and they are like crushed. And you're like, kid, it doesn't matter. But it does, but it doesn't. Well, I get really wrapped up in the things I'm stressed about. Like, what do you mean my performance can't be in the concert hall and now it's in the gym? Like, what do you mean I have lunch duty again? You know, and so doing something that I'm not good at is kind of like, oh, but I'm really good at a lot of things at my job. And I have a lot of these moments where, you know, the kids are providing joy. Life is good. So do something you're bad at.
Yes, I am definitely guilty of being one of those people who does not like it when I'm bad at things. So I'm sure as students, a lot of us who are watching this, we're going through methods classes. I'm really bad at flute, things like that, where it's like, how about we find something that we actually enjoy doing that we might be bad at and challenge those feelings? That's a really, really great idea. All right, so we're moving into one of my favorite sections, which is the general questions, not necessarily tied to your topic, but these are questions that a lot of our CWMEA members really want to know from all of our speakers. And the first one actually does have to do with your topic, which is convenient, and it is, what are some self-care tips for the transition from college student to professional in the music ed field?
Sure. Um, find your people. So when you get your first job, you are going to need help. You are going to be so overwhelmed and you're not going to know the answers, and that is fine. You need to find people at your new school that feel like on your same wavelength. And then if you move to a new town, you need to find people. You also need to find people in the field. And you should not feel nervous or insecure for even a second about reaching out to colleagues, because we have all been there. When I was a first year teacher, I constantly heard, you know, the best thing about being a first year teacher, it only happens once. And that's true and not true. But you need to find people in the field, in your discipline, that you can ask questions to. Because I was 23 here. The band that went on directly before me had a band director who was like late 50s, and we were doing the same thing. He brought his band to contest, I brought my band to contest. When I realized that, I was like, why am I even here? You know? So our job is not like, oh, first you're like a notary and then you become a paralegal and then you become a lawyer. It's like we're all in it together. And most of us really like to talk about what we do. So one of the most helpful things that I've ever done is find someone I really admire and say, can I buy you a coffee or a beverage of your choice at some time? I have some questions and I would love your opinions. And especially if you can cough up the change for a cup of coffee or whatever that beverage may be, it starts a rapport, you know? I went up to Kelly Klingon, director of jazz ed, who told me about this. I went up to her at like a festival and introduced myself because I really like her style. And then I asked if I could hang out with her and buy her a beverage. And then I picked her brain about all women ensembles. And now like we have a connection. So it really is that easy. So find your people, go shopping. Like, you all look very fashionable right now, but something that's really hard when you're transitioning, especially if you look 12 like me, when you're transitioning to your teacher life, remember that it's a job, it's a role. So like for me, it was Miss Howard. So Miss Howard's vibe was slacks, cardigan, necklace, hair blow dry, straightened, curled. Um, Ballet flats. I had like 30 pairs of ballet flats, and that was my style, and I felt good. I felt professional. I wasn't allowed to wear jeans in Missouri. Here, a lot of my colleagues are jeans and t-shirts kind of people. I myself sometimes go with a PE teacher vibe, but I'm comfortable in it. But when you're new, find your professional self and remember that it's not about you. That's probably the biggest thing. Like, so when I was at UW, I was a TA and I got to see undergrads be on the podium for the very first time during their practicum. And it was, this sounds cheesy, but it was an honor. It really was to see that moment. The very first time they stood on a podium and looked at an ensemble and were in charge. I always tell my kids, whoever's holding the stick is master of the universe. So it was like their first time being the master of the universe. And what I saw was so much fear, and the things that you're feeling self-conscious about, not a single child is thinking those things. You are thinking those things. The kid is just like, what are we doing? So remember, it's not you on the podium, it's Ms. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so. And it's your school persona. After I got married, I became Mrs. K, and I really liked that vibe. Mrs. K is like loving and kind, but also will kill you if you slouch. Like, that's my vibe. And so you like find what is authentic to you, but you also want to look the part. So find your people and go shopping. That's what you should do.
I love all of that. That's awesome. Okay, this one is also a CWMA member sent this question. It is, do you have a go-to pump up song to start your day? Any pre-class or pre-concert rituals? And I think they meant in the way of like a song that pumps you up for those things.
Mm-hmm. I really like brass band music. So Rebirth Brass Band, Youngblood Brass Band, Dirty Dozen Brass Band, Lucky Chops. And I play those at the beginning of class because they're super high energy. So it gets kids pumped up. I always have music like blasting out of my room. So something that I do is I do this big spiel at the beginning of the room, how our room is special. There's not another room like it in the school. Not everyone is allowed in it. And so it's ours and we have to protect it. And so I try to make that environment special. And so I stand at the door and do high fives as kids enter, mostly for middle schoolers, while there's like fun brass music blasting. I like there's a album by Youngblood Brass Band who did covers of pop songs. So they do like Rihanna's Umbrella. And so kids recognize it, but it's banned. And so it makes that connection for them. Like, oh, my saxophone can play that. So that's cool. I don't necessarily have like a pre-concert ritual for myself. Um, Another plug for go shopping before the concert, know what you're going to wear, um, and spend money on it. um, Eat Blue Box mac and cheese if you have to, but you should look and feel good for your very first performance. And I never, ever, ever wore a suit before I was a conductor, and I felt really awkward for a very long time in it. But the suit jacket is worth it. If you are female identifying, don't feel like, oh, I'll just wear a black sweater because that's like a, a male thing. That's not true. If you feel like you want to wear a suit jacket, do it. I have like 6 of them. I kind of collect them now. But yeah, make sure that you feel really good for your concert. I did want to share, so a pre-concert ritual that I've done with all my beginning bands at every school I've been at. So like the week before the concert, you have to teach them how to do the thing where I'm standing next to the box. Oh, I'm standing on the box and my hands go up. And every year I do the same thing and it's the same response. I like train them when I step on the box. I like slowly put my foot on the box and then I'll say, okay, when I step on the box, you go, and then I'm like, okay, let's try it. And then they all make the sound effect. I don't tell them to make the sound effect, but they all do it every year. And then I'm like, okay, but you don't have to make the sound effect. And they're like, okay. And then I try it again. Sound effect every single year. And then I pretend to be mad about it, but I think it's adorable. But so then it's memorable. And so then in the concert, they're all staring at me to see when I'm going to step on the box, which is great because it means that they're not screwing around and they're ready for the concert. So they're staring at me and I stare back at them and there's some giggling. And then we do the thing and then we mouth the together and then we start. So it's a way to kind of like harness the energy and get them pumped up. And it's a special moment because my back is to the audience. So parents know that something's going on, but they have no idea. And so that's special. So that's kind of my ritual.
Yeah, that's super cute. All right. The next question is, this is kind of a loaded one actually. What is one thing you wish you knew before becoming a teacher?
So many things. It is more important to be authentic than to do what is traditional or what has always been done. If your predecessor does a thing that doesn't feel good to you, don't do it. If your mentors all do a certain thing, but it doesn't feel authentic to you, don't do it. Because if you're not being authentic, it will not feel good to you and it will not be effective. And then the other thing is I didn't know that I would have to educate up. So like, for example, right now in my real life scenario, we're having to explain to administration why performances are so important. And so to have a performance, we should have an audience, and that doing a video performance does not hold the same weight as a live performance. And as musicians, it's like, obviously, but to administrators, like, they don't know that video editing is extremely time consuming. It is not covered in our degree program. Most of our computers cannot handle like the requirements to even do like a 40-person grid video. I learned how to do it in the pandemic, and I dare say it's kind of fun, but I don't have time to do it, especially not with all 4 of my bands, plus my 2 adult bands. So I guess I wish I knew, I guess I don't wish I knew, but it's something I didn't know, that don't assume that your administrators understand your job. Because unless they were, something you want to find out, were they band kids? Do their kids play instruments or sing? Because just, it makes a huge difference. And if the answer is no, maybe they're still nice people. I don't know. But you are going to have to share what that's like, because it's it's a different world. So.
Yeah, that is great advice. I think the first one you mentioned is a really great thing to think about because it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning of the session where you're an introvert. And I think there's this stereotype of you have to be this really loud and outgoing and super energetic person to be a band director. And that's just not true. I mean, some of the educators that I respect the most are the most private and need the most time to recharge. And I think that has a lot to do with what you were saying about the first tip. And then the second one I think is also great. I come from a family, both my parents are upper level administrators, they work in districts. And I mean, we've had conversations where they were like, there are so many things that I know that you are learning as a music educator that I wish the music educators in the district communicated to me so I could better support them as an admin. So that's really, really great advice also. All right, our very last question, and this can go on for a tangent if you wish, is any funny classroom management horror stories, and what are your go-to tools to combat this misbehavior in the classroom?
Sure. I would say I've never had anything terrible happen, but especially when I was a younger teacher, like I like to goof around with kids, and so it would just get to a point where we weren't productive anymore. And like once they've kind of lost their focus, like it's especially with younger ones, it's hard to bring them back. Even with high school kids, like once they've kind of like invested in a topic that's not music, they're gone. So yeah, it took me a while to find that balance. I actually just had a really interesting conversation with my high school concert band. I was reading in the Facebook National Band Directors group. Take that advice from that group with a grain of salt. That people were having a conversation about what do you do about high school kids and phones. And I have like an immediate gut reaction. And I'm just like, there's no phones in rehearsal because you don't need it. It's fine. But there were some people that were like, I just let them use it when I'm not working with them because it's easier to not fight it and it keeps them quiet. And that's gross to me because they need to be thinking about music. When I'm not working with them, they need to be still thinking about music, how their part fits with who I am working with, or that is a perfect opportunity to figure out those notesy passages or look up a fingering for that note, or just listen and enjoy music. So I think for classroom management, the goal is to keep them engaged in music all the time. Also pacing is important. I'm looking at my notes here. Clearer expectations and boundaries. Like I've been doing that for like the last, we're 6 weeks into school now. And I'd say the first 4 weeks we're setting boundaries, especially with students who haven't had me in class before. If a student does something that I'm not okay with after class, I will just be like, hey, chat with me for a minute. Tell me what happened. And then I let them tell me. And I say, I'm not mad at you. I just want to let you know that that's a boundary for me. Like I said that to an 8th grade boy who was talking across the classroom while I was talking. He never did it again because I straight up told him that's a boundary for me. I have some 6th graders who are persistently doing the thing I told them not to do, and I respond the same way every time. And so the frequency is getting less and less and less. But it is exhausting, but you have to do it. Because if you don't follow through, then you're gonna have to start over. It's like house training for puppies. Or it's like the one time I let my dog sleep in my bed. And then every night we fight about it where he's in the bed and I'm like, get out. And then he's in the bed and I'm like, get out. You probably have heard this in your classes, but relationship rapport with students is huge for classroom management. I think that all of my classroom management boils down, I came up with this theory like a year ago. I think it all boils down to intensity, equal parts intensity and love. So if you're just very intense all the time, and even if it's really good information, kids won't care. But if you were just like super loving and kind and complimentary, nothing will get done. So kids have to know that you care, but then also that you mean business. So having, like I tell my kids all the time, why am I making you do this again? Because you want us to be successful. Aren't you lucky that I care about you so much? And they're like, uh-huh. So I'm like very transparent about it. Or like sometimes I'll say, I love you all so much, stop talking. And they're like, okay. Or I'll say, I love you all so much, but that was bad. That sounded bad. And they're like, ow. And I'm like, well, it did. Let's make it better. So I think transparent statements like that, and then also checking in with kids after class. I had a hard time when I was younger with like really ADHD boys, because like I'm an introvert. I like quiet energy. And like when these boys come in like a wrecking ball and are noisy and might blurt out answers all the time, I'm just like, ah. And sometimes like when you go to talk to them, they're so used to being in trouble all the time because everyone's talking to them about it. They get really defensive, and then it's this power struggle. So I guess really after grad school, I changed my strategy. And so when I have to have those conversations, I sit next to the kid. I make a point to be next to them. And then I'll just say, tell me about your behavior. And then I'll say, rate your behavior on whatever scale you want. So some people will say like thumbs up, thumbs down, 1 to 10 or 1 to 100 or ABC. It really doesn't matter. It's just for them to own the behavior. So I'm not saying you did this. You are too much. You are being disruptive. They told me what they did. And then I say, yeah, I really love your energy. Like stock answer all the time. I really love your energy. And I'm not mad at you. That's the other thing you have to say. I'm not mad at you. I really love your energy. But do you think we could work on being more focused in class? What might that look like? Okay. What if you need a reminder? So really like it works for all kids, but for me personally, that was the demographic that did not come natural to me. So classroom management is about building relationships, being clear, having boundaries. And then Scott Brown said this to me when I was asking him for advice with jazz band. And because I was like, I'm not really a jazzer, I don't know. And he said, just enjoy it. If you enjoy what you're doing, kids will enjoy it. They can tell. So if you are doing all the things we talked about, if you're taking care of yourself, if you have a plan, you've managed your time, you've been thoughtful with your plans, and you are taking care of your well-being, kids can feel that. Kids can feel that you're in a good spot, and it creates a fun, safe environment for them. So take care of yourself, not just for you, but for your kids.
Great. Well, I think that is a perfect sentence to end this on. Thank you so much for being here with us, Erin. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. I know you had a full day of teaching today, so thank you for just being here and passing on your wisdom to the next generation of music educators. We'll end the recording here, but this video will be distributed to all the CWMEA chapters. So for those of you who were not able to make it when the session actually happened live, you'll be able to pull all this wisdom from this video later on. So thank you so much for seeing this, and thank you to Erin again.